like to welcome everyone to the Mama Vegas show. If you are new here, welcome in. I am thrilled today to have a special guest, a passionate advocate for helping women trust their bodies and break free from the confines of diet culture. Our guest is a registered dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor. So please help me welcome Jenna Talleda. Did I say it correctly, your last name, Talleda?
Yes, that's exactly right. Good job.
Awesome. Awesome. Welcome and thank you for coming on. I'm so excited for you to share your journey and your passion and kind of that thing that us as women we struggle with, and that is our bodies and our diet and our weight and acceptance. So I'm super excited to have you on.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you giving me the time to chat about this. Yeah, because it really is. We do, just as women in general, we have all of this pressure to always take up less space in this world. And, it could be under so many different guises, whether it's for health or whether it's for, appearance or whether it's for mobility and things like that. We're always told that in order to fix all those problems, that we have to shrink in order for that to happen. And that doesn't necessarily mean that.
Right.
So that's what I'm here to chat about today. So.
Yes, yes. Well, how did you become passionate about helping women trust their bodies and navigating away from the diet culture?
Yeah, I love this question. Well, it started because of my own personal journey with it. And throughout my entire life, I did have issues with food and with body and things like that. It was never anything that like needed treatment for. It just seemed like it was kind of that consistent low grade issue that most women have, that's
Yes,
like we just feel like on a day-to-day basis.
yes.
And I grew up in a house that was always focused on food and on weight and things like that. My mom and my sister were naturally in bigger bodies when I was younger, and I was on the smaller side because I took after my dad's side of the family. But then when I got to my 20s, I ended up getting diagnosed with PCOS. That's a polycystic ovary syndrome, and
Okay.
it's a hormonal issue that happens and can lead to some different things, including weight gain.
Yeah.
And so throughout my entire adult existence, I just had been fighting with the scale the whole time, and I just thought that was normal, especially because what I learned from my parents, but also just when I was learning to become a dietitian, it was force fed into us that we all had to match the BMI.
Yeah.
And because of that, I always felt like I never matched, Um, and and so like for about 10 years or so after becoming a dietitian, I was kind of in that mode and I was helping people with weight loss and stuff like that. But it got to this place in my life where um it was I was I was in an unhappy marriage,
Yeah.
and and there were things that were said that really struck to my core.
Yeah.
My 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 husband at the time excused. I have to be careful because I have little ears around. Um, but
Yes.
um, um, but my husband at the time had said that it was okay for his cheating because I was fat, and it struck me to my core.
Yeah.
And at the time I was dealing with a lot of other stuff. I was feeling with my own insecurities, and things like that, and I just felt like, well, this is out of my control.
Yeah.
um and 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 he's just blaming all of this on me, and at the time I didn't realize that it was like a deflection, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but instead I just internalized it. And so after that, I I put myself on this crazy restriction. And I felt like the only way that I was going to find, a healthy relationship and a successful, feeling successful as a dietitian and
Yeah.
just that kind of life that I wanted for myself, I felt that I had to be smaller in order for
Yeah.
that to happen.
Fit the norm.
And yeah, exactly. So I put myself on this crazy restriction and I had so many rules to it that, it was hard to explain to other people. But
Yeah.
in a, in a nutshell version, it was kind of a takeoff of low carb, but I actually made it no carb. And, and when everything had to be made at home. And I couldn't let myself go out to eat anywhere. I couldn't go to friends' houses. I couldn't go anywhere. I just had to eat at home.
Mm.
And and if and when I was going to the gym, which I really didn't care for the gym, but that was all that I could think of, like
Yeah.
for for movement. And actually, I was in a mindset of punishment. So I was just thinking, what's the thing I could do to punish myself the most? And so the gym was that place for me. And but the machine that was of like that I could tolerate, the one that wasn't as awful as the other ones were, was the elliptical. And but when I would work out on the elliptical, um, I had to work out at levels that weren't safe. That it was the heart rate was in the danger zone.
You pushed
Because
yourself.
yeah, because if it were lower in the healthy range or whatever, I felt like it wasn't hard enough.
Yeah.
And and so and it got to a point where I burnt myself out on all of that, and I would drive myself to the gym, sit in the parking lot and stare at the building and couldn't get myself to go in.
Oh,
And there were times I even like drove away. I was like, nope, it's just not going to happen today.
you're doing
And
it.
yeah, and it, and when it came to my food, there were like very rare occasions where somebody convinced me to go out to dinner, and but I had to be that person, or I felt like I had to be that person that told the waiter how to make everything so it matched restriction,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and as awkward as that felt, it felt like I was having like the utmost willpower, like I was doing
Yes.
so cool. But of course, my food tasted, awful because I really was taking everything out of it that was pleasurable. And by the way, I was never ever like this with my clients. I just was really in punishment mode with me. So, um, but anyways, so it got to this place where it was Thanksgiving and it was my birthday.
Yeah.
And I made all of the recipes according to my restriction. And some some of the recipes came out good. Some of them came out awful. And one of them was my birthday cake. Um,
Oh,
it, and it didn't come out right.
no.
It was not good. It didn't set up how it was supposed to set up, and because I was trying to use almond flour instead of wheat flour, and it doesn't behave the same way. And so like it came out like this goo, and it was
Oh.
so nasty and gross. And I actually made myself eat it. Oh, it was
Oh no.
awful. It was awful. But I was like, well, it's my birthday, and this is the only thing I'm gonna get for
So I gotta
birthday
try
cake.
it.
So yeah, but at that point, I was just like, oh my God, this is awful.
Yes.
And I'm gonna give myself the holidays off to enjoy and things like
Yes.
that. And then come January, I will get myself back on the wagon and I will put myself back on my restriction again. Um, because at that it was around maybe a little before that, but I had a friend tell me something and it was so strange to me because um he told me that I didn't look well.
Yeah.
And I was very confused. I was very confused because according to the BMI, I was still technically in the overweight category. I wasn't near where I was the healthy weight or
Yeah.
whatever. But now looking back at those pictures, I was I was not healthy. I was very scrawny. I looked very emaciated.
Yeah.
And so it didn't make sense to me because this is the measure we're supposed to go by, right?
Right.
And um and so but January came and went and I couldn't get myself to go back on it again because it was just like it was so much torture.
Yeah.
And there's also this window of time when you're going from having carbohydrates and not having carbohydrates where you feel like grumpy and tired and like worn out and things like that. And
So just
it
up and
lasts
down,
like
up and down.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it lasts for that time. And I was like, I can't do that. I just can't I pushed myself through that again. And so I ended up just being a little loosey goosey with my food. I had some still restrictive tendencies, but it wasn't as intense as it was before.
Yeah.
Um, until I came up and I ended up getting this new position at a drug rehab hospital. Um, and a lot of the folks there, when they were coming off their drugs or alcohol, they actually resorted to eating disorder behaviors or disordered eating. And at the time, I didn't have a lot of experience with that.
Yeah.
So I did some research and I found out that intuitive eating was a very successful approach for people with eating disorders. So I started reading this book with my clients in mind.
Yes.
And then I started realizing that they wrote the book about me. And this is so like, it was like they had like a camera into my life, you know?
You're like, who's
And they did,
filming?
yes, exactly. Exactly. It was crazy. And so, but yeah, everything that they were talking about, it resonated with me so much.
Right.
Just like why why we feel guilty about food, why we sit and fight with the scale all the time, you know, the food police voice that we have in our head, um, um, emotional eating, like all of those different kinds of things and all of that. And it just was like this huge light bulb moment for me. And
Yeah.
I realized that it it was completely different from what I had learned before. So I was kind of like screaming at the book on one side of it, but I was also like, yes, you're so right. and, and so, but I realized that I didn't have to live in that way anymore. I didn't
Yes.
have to sit there and be so miserable all the time with my food. Like, I didn't have to sit there and match my worth to my weight because that's
Yes.
what I did.
Yes.
Um, and you know, oh, the other fascinating thing was is that during that time that I was doing that restrictive time, well, I thought that it was going to actually address my issues. It actually didn't. It didn't. It I did get more attention from men, but they treated me like shit.
Yeah.
And then the feeling successful in my career, I
Yeah.
still didn't feel successful. I still didn't feel good enough. And then I ended up having this whole laundry list of other crap that was going on. Like I felt obsessed with food all the time. I only felt good about my body when somebody commented, or if I caught a glimpse in the mirror. But that
Yeah.
lasted like 2 milliseconds, and then I was right back to criticizing myself, saying, nope, that it's still not good enough.
So just temporary happiness.
It
Temporary.
was,
Yeah.
yes, very, very. And yeah, and it didn't really end up addressing what I needed. And so I started after I found intuitive eating, like I knew that I needed to heal my relationship. And I also knew after working with people in this realm for 10 years that so many people fight with this,
Yeah.
and I don't want people to have to deal with what I dealt with. I want them to be able to honor what their bodies are saying. I want them to be able to cut out all the noise that's around them and be
Yes.
able to just tune into what they need and feel good in their bodies, no matter what their size is. So shortly after I wanted to like learn everything I could about this, I became certified.
Yeah.
I studied under the authors, which was so amazing. And then I I kind of dove head first into it, and that was back in 2017. And so I'm in a much different place now than I was back then,
Yeah.
with my food and body. And I just want to bring this to the world because I feel like we really need it.
Yes.
Um, so that's where that's my origin story with all of this.
I think it's so important, as you said, and you mentioned that you were punishing yourself. Um,
Yes.
and it wasn't because of how you felt, it was because of how someone else felt, that you were
Yeah.
comfortable with you until, and it's amazing that we can allow ourselves to get so caught up, um, in those things, and like you said, where we don't enjoy, the simple things as food, and, where it becomes a punishment, we're torturing ourselves with it. We're torturing ourselves with exercise, with health, and it's supposed to be something that we do. We try to make that part of our
Yeah.
daily and everyday. Can you share some common challenges women face when it comes to their relationship with food and how you approach and address these issues?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Um, you know what? A diet culture is around us all the time, and it's really hard to not be in the middle of it because it's so hard to get away from. I mean,
Yeah.
even just like turning on the TV, you can't even turn on like a silly show to watch to get a few giggles because there's fat jokes mixed into them, you
Yeah.
know? Or there's like there was one time that I had somebody come over to fix something in my bathroom. And so before we got into all of that, we had a little small talk between us,
Uh-huh.
and he was telling me about his wedding, and all of a sudden it turned into his weight loss process. So it's like, and this was during my recovery period. And so like you can't recover in a bubble because there's so much around us about people always trying to push that smaller is always better kind of
Yeah.
ideal. And so I think that's really hard. Plus another big one is when you go to the doctor's office, there's so much pressure at the doctor's office to be smaller. You step on the scale right away when you get there, and then they sit there and I've had clients that their their doctors would reprimand them like they were small children about the size of their body, um, as if
Body
like,
shaming. Yeah.
yeah, body shaming. um, or they deny them necessary care, like procedures or medications, because the only thing that they could think of is, oh, they need to lose weight first.
Yes.
And And the smaller people, they will get the treatment, but the bigger people will just be told to lose weight. And it doesn't matter like whatever you're doing, like you could be moving around, you could be doing whatever you could to try to make your body smaller, but there's biological reasons why that happens, that the scale
Right.
kind of fights back, or our bodies fight back from the scale. And and even if you try to lose weight, there's there's research that shows that most people will regain the weight back or more within 2 to 5 years. It's not in any fault of the person for lack of trying. It's because we have things in place that protect us,
Yeah.
and one of those things is making sure that we stay stable. And so it just our weight ends up going back and forth, and it just causes more trouble. So, in answer to your question, different things of what we could do about that. I mean, I talked about so many different issues that could come up for people, but I think a great first step into diving into any of this is coming from a place of curiosity and not
Yes.
from a place of judgment. Because we can sit there and tear ourselves up and say, oh, I'm doing something wrong, or oh, I'm a bad person, or oh, I'm not healthy, or, all of this, take on this moral value, uh, end up getting disordered eating practices as a result of that because we feel so ashamed from all of that. But if we can come from a place of curiosity, just pure curiosity, without any sort of bashing that comes with it, um, we can kind of take a bigger look at the overall picture and see what's actually happening. And not that you're doing anything wrong because you're in a bigger body, but more of just like, what's society telling me? And why do I feel like I can't do anything just because I'm in a bigger body? Because that's not the case. It's just that we're portrayed, or people are portrayed in the spotlight as only being smaller. And so
Yeah.
we get this in our head that bigger people can't do things or can't feel
Yes.
a certain way, in that body. So I would say curiosity is a really big first step.
Yeah. And I think that, as you said, the curiosity being the first step, but it's just taking the first step, it just
Yeah.
taking that first step to accepting of yourself and who you are, who you're supposed to be. And I think a lot of people struggle. Some people are just, naturally, big boned, some are naturally
Yeah.
frail or thin, and some people struggle and wonder, why can't I gain weight? And some people struggle, why can't I lose? And sometimes it's just, we're just meant to be who we're meant to be. And that's why we do those fluctuations, because the body's like, that's not you. This is you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Weight is determined by so many different factors. It's like drilled into our head that the main factors are food and exercise, but that's actually false. Those are small little segments of the pie if you're looking at the whole entire picture here. Um, there's there's other parts, like genetics plays a really huge part in what our weight is, medical conditions, access to different kinds of things, um, uh, medications, stress levels, various kinds of things that play into determining what our weight actually is. And so, and the way that they determined these these numbers actually has a lot of racist and misogynistic roots to them.
Yeah.
And um it's very sad, and it's very disheartening that we're all just supposed to be pigeonholed into this BMI box. And this is the BMI box uh is really, this is where they get the terminology for overweight and obese. is from the BMI. But the BMI is only a measure of someone's height to their weight. So pretty much just the box that they take up in this world.
Yeah.
And um, where this number first was created, I mean, there's a whole bunch of history past that, but where it all started was actually over in Europe in the late 1800s, and it was developed by a man who had no role in the health industry at all. He was actually a mathematician and an astronomer. He he wasn't a medical professional at all. He just liked playing with numbers. And he realized that people were filled with numbers. And so he collected his information and started categorizing. But the thing was, the only people he took measurements from were other white European males like himself. They were not of any women. They were not of any other cultures or races or people from other countries. Nothing. It was
Yeah.
just white European males like himself. And so those were like that's the beginning part of that story, and it doesn't get any better from there. But it really doesn't. But but the point of the story is that how can we compare our bodies to those numbers when those are not what our bodies are? I mean, if
Correct.
you consider somebody from like Samal from oh goodness, my brain is not working with me. But like the people in like the Pacific Island areas. Why am I not thinking of their name? I can't remember. But there's people in the Pacific Islands who are in very big bodies. See, like even just Hawaiian folks and people from that area, they're naturally bigger people. That's
Yeah.
just them. There's people from Asia who are in naturally smaller bodies. There's people from all over the world where they all have different sized bodies because they all come from different genetics, you know?
Correct.
But here we are, and we're all trying to fit into this box and say this is the place that we're supposed to be at. And that
One
doesn't
box
mean anything.
for
Yeah,
one box for all, and that's when that
ex-
one size doesn't fit all. That's where that comes in.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, and so yeah, so it's ridiculous to try to think that that's where we're all supposed to be and that we all have to be healthy at that place. Because I'll tell you, when I was in like my body before I started that crazy restriction, it was in a bigger body, and my blood sugar, blood pressure, and cholesterol levels were actually at the normal to low range at that size of my body. And when I put myself through that crazy restriction,
Hmm.
um, my numbers ended up going up through the air.
Your
And I
body's all
had
over the
higher,
place. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, and like my cholesterol went up, my blood pressure went up, everything. And then when I came back to where my body sits, those numbers ended up changing and coming back down again. And
Yeah.
so that's not necessarily the story for every single person, but the point of the story is that just because you're in a bigger body, it doesn't mean that getting to a smaller body or even just 10-pound difference doesn't necessarily mean that that's actually what's making that healthier for you. It could be
Right.
more of just that you're getting more sleep or that maybe you're including some variety into what you're eating or that you're um, moving your body a little bit more or something along those lines. Those different behaviors have shown to make an impact on people's well-being no matter what their size is.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily have to use the scale as a marker of success.
I like that. We don't have to use the scale as our marker of success. As a certified intuitive eating counselor, what key principles do you emphasize to guide women in reconnecting with their body's natural cues?
Yeah, well, there's 10 different principles. Each one of them has their own value. There's not any one that's more important than another, but I would say that depending on where a person is in their journey or what things really stick out for them, there might be some that might have more priority than others. So, uh, the first one I would definitely say is important for most people, and that's really more of understanding what diet culture is and how to let go of it. Because it's so intertwined into our world that it just feels like it's supposed to be there. That we're supposed to do these different things or whatever. But the fact is that these things actually contribute to having a worse relationship with food and body. Um, Also, I would say that learning how to reject the or food neutrality is another big one that is also important. When we sit there and we put food on pedestals, we
Yeah.
give them good or bad designations. It ends up giving those foods a lot more power than they deserve. And so, um, and as a result, we end up treating them differently. Like let's say, I mean, chocolate cake is something that most people would say is, oh, it's a bad food or whatever.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
um, and carrots are like amazing food or something. Everybody has their own designations. But let's say that this chocolate cake was a bad food. Okay. Well, what's going to happen if somebody were to tell you that you can no longer have chocolate cake anymore? What would happen? Or fill in the blank of any food that you feel is quote unquote bad. What do you think would happen if somebody were to say you could never have that ever again?
I would probably overindulge.
Yeah, exactly.
I would overindulge.
Exactly.
If this is it, I'm
Exactly.
going for the I'm gonna keep going. Yeah. I would overindulge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there's even steps before that would happen. Like for example, we'd start obsessing about it. We couldn't get it out of our head.
Yeah.
And then it built up to this place where we just couldn't take it anymore. And then when we finally were to have it, then we would feel like we were eating to a place of uncomfortable fullness or feeling out of control. And we get the guilt and the shame from doing that. And then the cycle would start all over again, where we
Yeah.
put it in a restriction and it build up and it'd be like that.
Just a
And this
vicious
can have
cycle back and forth.
exactly, exactly. And this can happen with any kind of restriction, whether it's the kind of food, the amount of food, or even the when you allow yourself to have it. Um, and that same cycle will happen for any of those three things. So, so the fact of the matter is that when we can start taking those foods off of that pedestal, and you give yourself permission to be able to enjoy them,
Yeah.
then all of a sudden the power gets taken out and they just become foods. And it's not a matter of saying like to make you not want it anymore or things like that. But it's just a matter of treating it like it's another delicious food. Like I
Yeah.
will always have permission to be able to have this. I can enjoy it whenever I want to.
Yeah.
Um, Kind of scares people when they hear that because they feel like they have to hold on to that restriction. But the fact is that it's that restriction that it actually triggers the whole thing to happen. And it gets to a place where your body does want other things. It doesn't just want to eat chocolate cake endlessly. You're going to want to eat some food that's going to help you go to the bathroom or some foods that's going to give you some more power or,
Right.
or something else, um, it it happens. You might even crave other things that you might have thought you'd never craved before.
Yeah.
But when you can give yourself that freedom, it
Yeah.
it it takes that power out of that food, and you no longer feel guilty about it. Um,
Yeah.
so that's really an important key point for intuitive eating.
And I like that you point out that you should enjoy food. I think that in our first initial discussion, it was right before the holidays, and we talked about how food is used. It's something that's used to bring family together in mealtime and conversation and dishes and recipes is something we passed around. And
Yeah,
that was never something we took and read the back of the label first before we passed the recipe around. And I think that, like you said, we've become so engulfed in society and what society is seeing as the norm. You must read everything before you eat it. You must, and sometimes you just, like you say, you just want to open it up and enjoy it. You just want to enjoy it. You just want to take it in. And that's what we're supposed to enjoy food, of course, portioned. And we're supposed to, like you said, the good and the bad, as they say, weigh a little bit of this with a little bit of that. But food is to be enjoyed, not as a punishment or a restriction
yeah,
to punish ourselves.
yeah, and um, definitely, you know, getting a good variety of all things is definitely a very important piece of all of this. And we also want to be able to channel into what our bodies are saying. So it's not like necessarily a complete free for all as it sounds on the surface level. And that can really freak people out like it's a free for all. It's not really a free for all because your body does get to a place where, you kind of felt like, yeah, I'm kind of good. I'm kind of done here. I would like to move on and do something else. Um, and at first, if something's been off limits for so long, then it's gonna feel like you can't get enough of it for a while. And that's okay. That's just part of the journey, but it doesn't mean like that's gonna be that way forever. It's just that it's been off limits for so long that you just need to get your fill of it. But
Yeah.
to your point about food brings us so much stuff, you're right. We really shortchange that. Food does provide us more than just nutrition and calories. It provides us with connection and celebration and um, um, just there's I usually have a whole list of things that food does provide for us, and right now my brain's not working. But there's so many different things. Comfort is another one that food
Yes.
does provide for us. It also being able to have access to something because we might not completely have access to everything that we would want to have. Um, we eat for that reason. We eat because something is delicious.
Yeah.
And if we sit there and we're only focused on the nutrition label, we completely forget everything else that food is supposed to be offering for us,
Yeah.
and that really interferes with our life and how we choose to exist. So so it's still important to give ourselves permission to be able to explore all aspects of food, not necessarily just feel like it's we can only focus on that.
Can you provide insight to listeners of the importance of body positivity and self-acceptance in the journey towards gaining a healthy relationship with food when you're done with the restrictions? And of course, we know we're excuse me, we're eating carbless everything, or we're only eating vegetables for a certain amount of time. Of course, we're going to maintain a smaller figure or so forth. But when we go back to enjoying our food and we go back to going back to our natural state and sizes, can you provide that self-acceptance into that journey for someone who may struggle
Yeah,
because of that?
yeah, definitely. That's another huge piece right there. Because um as somebody who's definitely experienced like times where I hated my body, you know, I was just so mad at it for so many different reasons. And, it's really hard to treat yourself with care when you're coming from a place of hate. And this could look like so many different things, but dieting and restricting ourselves can definitely be one of those, even though on the forefront it might appear like you're trying to take care of yourself, or that you're, treating yourself, in a certain type of way. But really underneath it all, it is a form of punishment, you know? And I mean, I will say, like, there are things like if somebody does have like a health condition or something like that, they do have to keep those things in mind. But there are ways that we can approach those health conditions without coming from a place of restriction. I never felt like that was actually very supportive or anything that people could keep up with long term. Um, when it comes to things like body positivity, and acceptance, that's a very hard thing to take a bite out of. Like, it can really feel like body acceptance and body positivity is like a million miles away.
Yeah.
Um, and so what I work on with people in the beginning is working on, first of all, taking baby steps, and working towards appreciation and neutrality, because those can kind of feel more doable. Um, they even if you don't really like your body, you don't like how something looks or what have you, you can still show appreciation for your body. Like for example, um, if we were to talk about like, oh my gosh, I hate my thighs, well, what can your thighs do to like help you function, you know? Well, what's something that you can look at your body and really appreciate about your thighs? Well, they help me stand up. Well, they help me carry the rest of my body. Um, they let me walk around, so I can go and do different things. Um, they are really great, like hugging areas for my little tiny relatives who like giving me hugs and can't reach me, you know, the, and so there's all of those different kinds of things. Now that's just one little tiny step. That's obviously not
Yes.
gonna flip the switch and all of a sudden you're gonna be best friends with your body. But if you can start taking little tiny baby steps, those baby steps do add up. And they do help you get to that place where you can start feeling more neutral, more like you can exist with your body, even if you're not a best friend with your body. So, because there's going to be days where some days are going to be easier than others. And so, just trying to get to those baby step places, I find is a lot easier for people than saying, oh no, I'm going to be body positive USA and, I get my pom poms out and yay, body, yay. No,
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's ridiculous. People are gonna laugh at me if I think that that's what they're gonna do. But if they can at least take those steps and say, you know what, my belly is a great place for my cat to sit and snuggle with me on, or oh, that helps me digest my food, or my hugs, I give really, or my arms give really great big hugs to people that show my love. Or they help me carry things, they help me carry things from the car to the house.
Yeah.
And whatever the case is, making showing that appreciation can really help those steps forward.
Yes. Before we get out of here, I wanted to know if you had or a message for anyone right now struggling or or also going on their own journey, on this healthy back to me kick, back to me, back to me.
Oh, I love
How,
that.
what message would you have for those listeners out there, those viewers that's going to watch our podcast episode? What message do you have that you can leave that would resonate with those individuals?
Yeah. So I would say a few different things. First thing, you deserve to take up space, whatever your body uses. And you deserve to eat. And your worth is also not your weight. So just holding on to those pieces and realizing all of those things, it's you 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 deserve to exist because you're here in this world, not because you are smaller or because you're some idealistic view of the world, because you're here and because you're worthwhile.
Yeah.
So those,
How can our listeners, Jenna, connect with you in the future? Could you give us that information for our viewers that may want to follow you, may want to reach out, who need that support after this episode? If you wouldn't mind giving that information out for our listeners.
of course, of course. So I am on Facebook and Instagram. My handle is Your Nutrition Ally. Actually, for Instagram, it's your dot nutrition dot ally, and I'll share that information with you so you could add it to the notes and stuff. But yeah, you can find me there. I also have this really amazing group that I'm putting together. I have some people in there already. Um, that it's called Permission to Exist, and it's a membership where we meet every Tuesday, and it's just a safe place where we don't have the pressure of taking up less space. We also talk about concepts within intuitive eating, learning how to appreciate our bodies and hating them less, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and It's a really fantastic, supportive environment. I actually have a vetting process to make sure people are right for the space and to continue to keep it safe because it is definitely a very vulnerable subject. So I want to make sure that it's right for people. And, if people are there to come and like promote their latest diet or to talk about how being smaller made their life better, uh,
Yeah.
that's kind of questionable. But if they're there to actually dive into what their relationship with food is and what their relationship with body is, and that's the person I'm looking for. So
You had a safe place, and I like the way you said it's a community, a community of a safe place, non-judgment, of encouraging better self-love, encouraging self-love.
exactly.
I would like to give you the biggest thank you, Jenna, for joining us today, for sharing, your insights on trusting our bodies and escaping that diet culture treadmill. As you say, if you've enjoyed today's convo, please subscribe to Jenna and to the Mama Vegas show. Share this journey. With a friend who may need a dose of body positivity. Remember, you are worthy just as you are. Until next time, continue to live with passion and purpose.
Thank you.